There's something uncomfortable I want you to notice before this goes any further. The thought in your head right now, the one saying this probably doesn't apply to me, that thought itself might be the lie. Because your brain isn't a neutral observer of reality, it's a survival machine. And survival doesn't require truth, it requires efficiency. Your brain's primary job is not to show you the world as it is. Its job is to keep you alive, conserve energy, protect identity, and avoid psychological pain. And if that means bending reality, filtering facts, or rewriting memories, it will do it without hesitation. You experience this as confidence, as intuition, as common sense, but most of the time, it's just a story your brain is telling you, and you rarely question it. Think about how often you're absolutely certain about something, only to realize later you were wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. What's disturbing isn't that you were mistaken, it's how convincing the mistake felt at the time. Your brain didn't feel uncertain, it didn't raise alarms, it didn't say warning, incomplete information. It said this makes sense, move on. And that's where the danger begins. Because once your brain locks onto a narrative, it doesn't seek truth anymore, it seeks confirmation. This is called cognitive closure, the brain's hunger for certainty. Uncertainty burns energy, doubt creates tension, and tension feels like danger. So your brain does what it does best. It simplifies. It turns complex people into labels, ambiguous situations into stories, random events into patterns, and uncomfortable facts into things you don't really need to think about right now. You don't see reality. You see the edited version your brain believes you can handle. And most of the editing happens without your consent. Take memory, for example. You probably trust yours. You feel like you remember things as they happened. But memory isn't a recording. It's a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain rebuilds it, using emotion, expectation, and your current self-image as raw material. Which means your past is quietly changing every time you revisit it. Arguments feel more justified. Embarrassing moments get softened or reframed. Failures acquire excuses. Successes gain heroic details. Not because you're dishonest, but because your brain is protecting your sense of identity. Your brain's greatest fear is not being wrong. It's being wrong about who you are. So it lies in small ways, then bigger ones, then ways so subtle you mistake them for truth. This is why people can hold contradictory beliefs without noticing, why intelligent people fall for obvious manipulation, why emotional patterns repeat even when you swear you've learned the lesson. Because learning requires admitting the story was false. And false stories feel like threats. Your brain hates threats. That's also why first impressions are so powerful. The moment you meet someone, your brain makes a snap judgment, friend or threat, safe or unsafe, like me or not like me. That judgment isn't based on deep analysis. It's based on tone, posture, familiarity, and past emotional associations. Once the judgment is made, your brain begins building evidence after the fact. If you decided someone is arrogant, every confident statement becomes proof. If you decided someone is kind, every mistake becomes an exception. Your brain doesn't update beliefs easily, it defends them. And the scarier part? You feel like you're being objective while this happens. Your brain is excellent at making its conclusions feel inevitable. This is why arguments rarely change minds, why facts bounce off emotional armor, why people defend ideas that harm them, because the brain isn't asking, is this true? It's asking, does this keep me safe? And safety often means familiarity. Even familiar pain feels safer than unknown change. That's why people stay in unhealthy relationships, why they repeat the same self-sabotaging habits, why they return to identities that no longer fit. The brain lies by saying, at least I know this. And then there's the biggest lie of all, the feeling that you are in control. You feel like you choose your thoughts, your reactions, your desires, but most of what moves you happens before conscious awareness even arrives. Your brain decides what you notice, what you ignore, what feels urgent, what feels threatening. By the time you show up, the decision is already leaning one direction. Consciousness isn't the driver, it's the narrator. And narrators are not obligated to tell the full truth. They're there to make the story coherent. That's why emotions often arrive before explanations. Why you just feel something is right or wrong. Why you rationalize choices you didn't consciously make. Your brain hands you the conclusion, then invites you to justify it. This doesn't mean you're powerless, but it does mean awareness is rarer than we think. Most people aren't living deliberately. They're living automatically, guided by a brain optimized for survival in a world that no longer resembles the environment it evolved for. And this mismatch creates anxiety, reactivity, and constant mental noise. Your brain evolved to detect threats in the dark, not to process endless information, social comparison, and abstract stress. So it shortcuts, it exaggerates, it catastrophizes, it clings to certainty, and then it tells you a story that makes all of that feel reasonable. Here's the quiet shift that changes everything. The moment you stop assuming your thoughts are facts, the moment you stop trusting every internal narrative, something loosens. You start noticing reactions instead of becoming them. You start questioning certainty instead of defending it. You start pausing between impulse and action. That pause is where freedom lives, not because your brain stops lying, but because you stop believing every lie it tells. You don't need to silence your mind. You need to observe it. Watch how quickly it explains, how confidently it concludes, how desperately it avoids uncertainty. The brain will always want closure, but clarity requires space, and the more space you create, the less control the story has over you. Your brain isn't your enemy. It's just outdated software running modern problems. But the moment you realize it lies, not maliciously, but automatically, you stop being owned by every thought. And that might be the most dangerous truth of all, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.